A black bear broke into the apartment complex and started brutally killing people. But I wasn't scared at all. Instead, I opened my own door and gave it the chance to kill me. The truth was, I had arrived in that small village a week earlier, the exact place where the black bear was destined to massacre people. And I already knew that 1 week later, the black bear would break into the apartment complex and brutally slaughter everyone. This black bear was incredibly intelligent. It was even capable of threatening humans and forcing them to help it. I tried to leave the apartment complex, but every time I stepped through the main gate, I would instantly teleport back into my own apartment. Even the words black bear had become prohibited words. The moment I said those two words, my voice would automatically get muted. I tried calling the police, but every single time, I would get a message saying that the call couldn't be connected. Since I couldn't ask anyone for help, I had no choice but to save my own life. I contacted a renovation company and started turning my apartment into an impregnable apocalypse fortress. First, I had 20-centimeter thick steel plates installed on the walls and the main door, but because of the weight problem, they weren't made from solid steel. Instead, they used a special alloy reinforced with carbon fiber, something even an anti-tank cannon couldn't penetrate. Next came the waterproofing. The black bear was extremely intelligent. If it somehow flooded my apartment, I'd have no choice but to quietly wait for my death, so I had the entire room completely sealed. And just in case someone managed to get water inside, I had pipes installed beforehand to drain it back out. The director of the novel was also working with the black bear. Every now and then, he would lure people outside using some excuse and make them prepare food right in front of the black bear. I suspected that he had chosen the location of the apartment complex a long time ago. That's why all the renovation materials were brought inside only at night. To keep the construction moving as quickly as possible, I specifically hired multiple construction teams so they could work continuously, 24 hours a day. Every useless item inside my apartment was completely thrown away, leaving me with a perfectly clear view. Once the renovation was finished, my living room looked like one giant cage. This was the trap I had prepared specifically for the black bear. Once it entered, escaping would be impossible. On top of that, I installed CCTV cameras throughout the corridors and lobby, so I could monitor the black bear's every movement at any time. I also installed a solar power system. Even if the black bear destroyed the main electricity switch, I could still use electricity without any problem. I had even bought a few weapons for self-defense. A shower and an air conditioner were also installed in the living room. The air conditioner's maximum temperature could reach 50 degrees Celsius, and the shower was there in case I needed to put out a fire. But simply trapping the black bear wasn't enough. My plan was to torture it brutally. This time, I wanted to find out once and for all, was this creature really the prey, or was it the hunter? At exactly midnight, I suddenly heard the sound of the electronic lock outside. Unlock failed. Unlock failed. I immediately looked at the CCTV footage and saw the black bear leaning against my neighbor's front door. Its eyes were pressed right up against the door, as if it were trying to look inside through the peephole and see what was happening. It even placed its paw on the electronic lock and started trying to unlock it. Through the CCTV, I could hear my neighbor cursing at the black bear, but the black bear didn't respond. Suddenly, it completely lost control in rage and started smashing the door over and over again. If this had been the original story from the novel, I would have gone outside a long time ago just to curse at it, only to get killed by a single swipe from the black bear. Just then, a message notification popped up on my phone. Don't open the door under any circumstances. There might be a bear outside. He didn't even have to tell me. I already knew, because I could see everything clearly through the CCTV. Then my neighbor from apartment 802 sent me another message. My door is completely broken and bent out of shape. It looks like it's going to collapse at any moment. I saw that your apartment was being renovated a few days ago. Can I come to your place and hide in the reinforced balcony? There was no scene in the original story where the neighbor from 802 contacted me. It seemed that my arrival had caused the events of the story to change, but that man had never even seen me before. So how did he know that my apartment had been reinforced? I replied, sorry, the balcony is completely sealed off. You can't get inside. On the other side of the chat, I could see him typing for a long time. After several seconds of silence, his message suddenly came through. Are you really at home? I couldn't understand what he meant by that message. But in a situation like this, there was no way I was going to play the hero and risk my life trying to help other people. On the CCTV, the black bear seemed to have grown impatient, so it turned around and started attacking the main door of my apartment. But my reinforced door was incredibly strong. After pounding on the door for a while, it suddenly stopped and completely gave up its attack. Even if the door had started shaking, how would I ever repay the favor of those loan companies that were passing by my apartment? Suddenly, another message notification popped up on my phone. People in the owners group had started complaining. Who is making all this noise at this hour? Are you trying to get yourself killed by opening the door? If this keeps going, I'm calling property management. Are you seriously not going to let us sleep? Then someone tagged property management. Wait a little. When the black bear couldn't even shake the main door of my apartment, it seemed like it had finally given up and started walking in the other direction. Damn, property management actually solved the problem really quickly. There was so much noise just now, and suddenly everything is completely quiet. Looks like our maintenance fees weren't wasted after all. But this time, there was no reply from property management for quite a while. Just when everyone thought everything was finally back to normal, property management suddenly started sending photos into the group. There was no clear pattern to the photos. Some showed walls, while others showed the corridors. The photos kept coming one after another, making the group notifications constantly go off. Does this guy seriously never sleep at night? Is he trying to get himself killed? Tomorrow, I'm definitely filing a complaint against you, and I'll make sure you get kicked out of here. Just then, another message came from property management. The photo showed the property manager completely covered in blood, with his body twisted into an extremely strange position. It looked as if someone had forcibly folded his body in half. The moment everyone saw it, the group exploded. Are you an idiot? Why are you sending people horrifying pictures like this in the middle of the night? There's seriously something wrong with your head. Next time the maintenance fee is due, I swear I'm not paying it. I quietly watched them argue with each other, but there was something strange. The neighbor from 802, the same person who had warned me about the black bear right from the beginning, had suddenly gone completely silent. It was very strange, extremely strange. Then the neighbor from 802 messaged me again. Please open your door. The black bear isn't here right now. I'm scared it might come back. You've seen the group messages too, haven't you? Please open the door. I couldn't understand something. If he already knew about the black bear, then why wasn't he telling everyone about it in the group? He kept emphasizing how terrifying and dangerous the black bear was, but his only real goal seemed to be getting me to open my door and let him inside. The typing indicator appeared in our chat again. I waited for a long time, but no reply came. Then, on the CCTV, I saw the black bear returning once again, but this time its entire body was covered in blood. Human blood was dripping from its fur, leaving bloody footprints across the floor. The black bear pressed its eyes against my apartment's peephole, trying to see what was happening inside. Just then, another message came from property management in the group, but this time, the message was badly broken and barely made any sense. Sorry, I accidentally took the photo. Open the door. Need to check 801. Apartment 801 was my home. I looked toward the CCTV and noticed that the black bear was holding something in its hand, and it seemed to be messing with it. Open door 801. Open door 801. Open door 801. Property management kept repeating the exact same message in the group, but the neighbors were getting impatient now, and they started tagging me as well. At 801 housing, open the door and let them check it. Nothing will happen. If everything is fine, they'll leave. Can you keep it a little quieter at night? I replied. There's a black bear in the corridor. Didn't you see that photo? It already killed the property manager. One neighbor said, Are you kidding me? Are you saying the black bear took that photo and sent those messages? Is today April Fool's Day or something? I said, I already warned you. Whether you believe me or not is your problem now. This is the most I can do. After that, the group suddenly went completely silent. Just when I thought everything was finally over, the neighbor from 802 suddenly sent a photo into the group. But immediately after sending it, he deleted it. One neighbor asked, 802, what did you send? You live on the 8th floor too. So, is there a black bear up there or not? Stop scaring everyone over and over again. First the photo, then all this talk about the black bear. But after that, the neighbor from 802 went completely silent in the groups. Seeing that, I decided it was better for me to stay quiet too. I'd already given them the warning I needed to give. What happened next was up to their luck. On the CCTV, the black bear realized that I wasn't responding at all, so it started pounding on my door again. This time, each blow was becoming more and more powerful, but the door didn't move even an inch. Suddenly, the black bear took 2 steps back. Then it slammed its entire body against the main door with all its strength. With a deafening crash, the black bear was thrown backward by the heavy impact. It shook its head, as if it had never expected the door to be this strong. That collision had clearly hurt it badly. The black bear moved its eyes toward the peephole, but I had modified the peephole too. Suddenly, a sharp spike shot out from inside the peephole and stabbed the black bear. The black bear let out a furious roar of pain. Then it started attacking the door with even more strength than before. But even with all that power, it couldn't do anything to my door. Just then, one of the neighbors asked, "What was that sound just now?" It sounded like some wild animal screaming to me. The second neighbor said, "Don't scare me like that." That was terrifying. The black bear was getting extremely frustrated, but there was nothing it could do. Once again, it started walking in the opposite direction. It looked like it had finally given up on going after me. Because of the sound we just heard, another heated discussion started in the group. What the hell just happened? I just heard a massive roar. Could there really be a bear here? I already told you guys about it, but none of you believed me. The bear has already left my side. I don't know where it went now, so what are you guys waiting for? Call the police. Wait, this is a completely new conversation. I had already predicted this, but the police couldn't actually be called. It was really strange. We could send messages, but phone calls simply wouldn't go through. Everyone, don't panic. I have a friend in the police department. The call isn't going through, but I already messaged him. He'll be here with some officers shortly. Everyone, just hold on for 20 minutes. The guy from 802 was extremely suspicious. He had been the first person to see the black bear, yet he hadn't said a single word about it. And now, all of a sudden, he was stepping forward and talking as if he were trying to calm everyone down. 802, you were the first person to see the black bear. So why didn't you say anything back then? I asked him directly. I wanted to put pressure on him through the group's public opinion and force him to reveal the truth. I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone in the group needed help. That's why I tried to inform the police. Yeah, 800. You didn't say anything either. Instead, sometimes you talk about a black bear, and other times you talk about murder. Honestly, you shouldn't have gotten involved. You didn't gain anything from it. Instead, you ended up making yourself look suspicious. Just then, the person from 2001 sent a strange message. I'm opening the door. Everything is fine. The message from 2001 was exactly like the one that had appeared after the property manager was killed. It seemed like the person from 2011 had been killed too. See? I told you there was no problem. 801 is the one unnecessarily provoking everyone. I think his intentions aren't right. He wants all of us to come outside. Yeah, what black bear? I think this whole thing is just 801's plan. The person from 802, who had been warning everyone about the black bear, was starting to look like the real culprit. In the end, a human heart could be far more dangerous than any monster. Once they came face to face with the black bear, they would all go silent on their own. Then 802 sent me a private message. Please help me and open your door. I'm begging you. I really can't take this anymore. I completely ignored his message and turned my attention back to the CCTV. The black bear had returned once again. Its desire for revenge was incredibly strong. After suffering so much damage from my apartment over and over again, there was no way it was going to let me off that easily. Suddenly, it disappeared from the CCTV's range again. But the moment I looked toward the window, I saw a massive black shadow outside. The black bear had already reached my window. This was the first time the two of us had come face to face. It couldn't clearly see my face through the window, so it angrily started pounding on the glass with its paws. Meanwhile, I pulled over a chair, placed it right there, and sat down. Sitting comfortably, I watched it while casually drinking my coffee. Seeing me sitting there so calmly made the black bear even angrier, and it started roaring furiously. I shouted at it even louder. What? Didn't you get enough to eat? The window's soundproofing was pretty good, but judging by its reaction, it seemed like it could understand what I was saying just by reading my lips. The blows against the window kept getting more and more powerful. Then suddenly, the entire apartment went dark. Someone had turned off the main power switch. The group immediately became active again. What happened? Did the power go out at your place too? The power is out here too. Did the main switch trip again? Quick, inform property management. What's the point of having property management if they can't even handle this? The discussion in the group kept getting more heated, but I immediately switched on my self-power generation system. Good thing I'd already installed my own power generation system, so I wasn't worried about the power outage at all. 801, why is there still electricity in your apartment? Even though he lived right next to me, there was no way he could see the inside of my bedroom. Not unless he was outside, observing the entire building. I immediately understood. The person from 802 wasn't inside his apartment at all. He was outside, watching the entire building. My apartment was the only one in the entire building that still had its lights on. The novel had never described this man's identity. It seemed that my arrival was creating one butterfly effect after another. Then a thought suddenly crossed my mind. Could this man actually be the director of the zoo? At this moment, he was the only person who could be observing the entire situation from outside the building. Just then, someone in the group said, I told you there was definitely something wrong with 801. He wants to lure us outside so he can rob us himself. Why aren't you saying anything? Was I right after all? If you're really that brave, then come outside. Let's settle this face to face. I still chose to ignore him. But suddenly, the elevator doors opened. A yellow-haired guy stepped out of the elevator, holding a phone in his hand. 801, stop pretending you're dead. I'm standing right in front of your door. If you're really that brave, then open the door. You don't let anyone sleep at night. Do you really think no one can teach you a lesson? Through the CCTV, I noticed that he seemed to be live streaming. A little while later, another message arrived on my phone. 71 had shared his live stream. I opened it, and there he was, live streaming right in front of my apartment door. In the top left corner of the live stream, the title clearly said, Teach the Weird Neighbor a Lesson. He was talking to his viewers. Brothers, my neighbor doesn't even sleep, and he's telling everyone in the group that there's a black bear here. I think this guy is crazy. And even if there really is a black bear, I'm not scared at all. Brothers, send me some gifts. I'm about to teach this guy a lesson. He walked up to my door with his phone in his hand and kicked it twice. If you've got the guts, open the door. Don't hide inside like a coward. I warned him once in the group chat. because the black bear had disappeared from my balcony at that moment, and it would be coming back inside very soon. But he kept pounding on my door and shouting, "Are you scared to come outside? Let's see how long a coward like you can hide in there. From now on, remember this. You'd better keep your head down whenever you're in front of me." Seeing his funny expressions, I couldn't help but laugh. With all the supplies and equipment I had stocked up, I could comfortably stay hidden inside for at least 6 months. Meanwhile, on the live stream, the yellow-haired guy kept complaining about me and presenting himself as someone who was only trying to protect everyone. He acted like he was the very incarnation of justice. Then suddenly, a massive black shadow appeared behind him. The yellow-haired guy turned around, and standing right in front of him was a black bear nearly 2 meters tall. The black bear swung its paw straight at him, sending him flying backward. There's really a black bear. I was just about to go up to the 8th floor to watch the show. Good thing I didn't go outside. When is the police going to arrive? This is terrifying. I just changed my pants and now they're wet again. Obviously, the yellow-haired guy didn't survive the encounter. After being sent flying by the black bear's attack, he hit the ground and passed out. Now, late at night, people in the group started tagging 802 over and over again. 802, when is your police friend getting here? Tell him to bring weapons. Yeah, hurry up and call him. Tell him to come here. But at that exact moment, 802 sent me a private message. My friend has arrived. If you're going, come outside right now. I'll tell him to take you with him. I didn't believe a single thing he said. Even in real life, no one helps someone that easily without having some kind of motive. And in a situation like this, that was even more unlikely. I didn't reply to him, but he kept sending me messages again and again. He had more patience than a clingy lover. If he wasn't trying to trick me, then maybe he was trying to kill me. Just then, I looked at the CCTV. Suddenly, I noticed the camera shaking slightly. The main door of apartment 202 opened, and another black bear walked out from inside. Good thing I hadn't believed him. I'd known from the very beginning that something was definitely wrong here. This black bear was much smaller than the first one, but its expressions and movements were completely human-like. Could it be that this bear had actually become intelligent enough to think like a human? Both black bears disappeared down the corridor. A short while later, I started hearing the screams of different monsters, along with the roars of the black bears. It didn't take long before both black bears returned to my apartment door. It seemed that everyone who had believed 802 and opened their doors had been killed. Both bears' fur was stained with fresh red blood. It was obvious they had just killed a lot of people. The two black bears were quietly talking to each other. It was clear that they had no intention of letting me go. But honestly, that was perfectly fine with me. I had been wondering why they weren't coming after me. This time, I wanted to find out once and for all, were you the hunter or were you the prey? This room had been prepared for the black bear from the very beginning. My original plan was to stay hidden inside forever and never go outside. But now it seemed that if I didn't give them a chance to come inside, they weren't going to back down so easily either. Just then, a mysterious man appeared in front of my door. He said, "Comrade, I'm the director of the zoo. Don't worry, we've already killed the black bear. We're sorry for all the trouble you've been through. If you don't mind, please open the door. I want to come inside personally and apologize to you." In my mind I thought, who the hell are you trying to fool? There's a massive black bear standing right beside you, and you expect me to believe I'm blind. Good thing I'd already installed CCTV cameras. Otherwise, I might have actually opened the door for him. He spoke again. "Comrade, open the door. I'm not a bad person." There was definitely something wrong with the zoo director, but at that moment, I still didn't know how exactly he was controlling these two black bears. However, now that he had come here himself, why not try a little experiment first? I used my phone to unlock the main door. The moment the door opened, both black bears became extremely excited and suddenly let out deafening roars. They rushed forward, pushing past each other as they tried to get inside the main door. It was as if they couldn't wait to tear me apart. The zoo director hesitated for a moment, but he still followed them inside. The moment all three of them entered, I used my phone to lock the main door. The entire living room is a cage prepared just for you. Enjoy yourselves. Now, the positions of the hunter and the prey had completely switched. I turned off the living room lights, and the entire room was immediately swallowed by darkness. Anyone who has ever been punished in prison knows about one particularly terrifying punishment: being locked inside a dark room, a small room completely cut off from the outside world, with absolutely no sound. After staying in a place like that for a while, a person starts becoming restless, and eventually, they can reach the point of a complete mental breakdown. At this moment, both black bears were anxiously running around the living room, but the main door leading outside wouldn't open at all. You came inside, so forget about ever getting back out. After wandering around for a long time, the two black bears seemed to realize that there was no point in wasting their energy, so they sat down on the floor and started conserving their strength. Animals and humans are different. They come from nature, so they can tolerate loneliness and long periods of waiting much better. But the zoo director's situation was completely different. After only 2 hours, he had already become restless and agitated. He started ordering the 2 black bears to find a way out. The 2 black bears tried several times, but they couldn't accomplish anything. The zoo director ordered them again. That's when the larger black bear suddenly lost its patience. It swung its paw at the zoo director and sent him flying across the room. At first, I'd thought the zoo director had somehow managed to control these 2 black bears. But I never expected him to turn out to be such a complete clown himself. The zoo director was lying on the floor. After moving a few times, he became completely still. That single swipe had twisted his body horribly. I guess this is what they mean when they say you eventually have to suffer the consequences of your own actions. I turned on the air conditioner and set the temperature to 50 degrees. Hot air immediately started filling the living room non-stop. The 2 black bears sensed that something was wrong and started looking around restlessly. Half an hour later, the room temperature had already reached 45 degrees, and it was still rising. Unable to bear the heat, both black bears started attacking the main door, but it was completely useless. A short while later, the temperature reached 50 degrees, and both black bears were completely exhausted. I deliberately turned on the shower. Water started pouring down rapidly, and the bears thought they had finally found a way to survive. But they had no idea that every time the water came down, the temperature inside the room was rising even more. Now you'll know exactly what it feels like to get roasted. I turned on the electricity in the living room. At this point, the entire living room was flooded with water. In an instant, 220 volts of electric current surged through the entire bodies of the black bears. Goodbye, black bears. Animals really are just prey in the end. An hour later, the police arrived at the apartment complex and took both black bears away with them. After that, my life became peaceful again, just like before. But suddenly, another scene appeared right in front of my eyes. 23 hours and 9 minutes remaining until entering the next scenario. I was stunned. What is this? The countdown, why is it still running? 23 hours and 9 minutes. Then that cold voice echoed inside my head again, reminding me that this was only the end of the first dungeon. The next horror was already making its way toward me. What kind of ridiculous game is this? It doesn't even give me a chance to catch my breath. It's seriously determined to push a person completely into a corner. I didn't have time to sit around feeling miserable. In this strange world, stopping meant the same thing as dying. I grabbed the mop and started cleaning the water and bloodstains covering the living room. The water was slowly draining out through the drainage pipes I'd installed beforehand. These tiles are going to need at least 3 rounds of scrubbing. The smell of this animal has spread throughout the entire room. This is seriously disgusting. While cleaning, I quickly started doing calculations in my head. The first dungeon had basically tested how strong the main door was. So what would happen in the second dungeon? Would an even more dangerous monster appear, or would it be some kind of extreme weather disaster? If extreme cold weather came next time, would the heating mode on my air conditioner be enough? I'd also need to go into the storage room and check the blankets. I walked over to the window and looked out at the dark apartment complex. The streetlights were flickering faintly. As for the neighbors who had survived, they were probably hiding under their blankets, trembling in fear. But I didn't have any pride about being some kind of hero or savior, because I knew very well that all of us were just like tiny insects trapped inside a closed trap. Whatever comes next, I have to survive no matter what. Nothing has been able to take my life yet. I checked the generator and my supplies one last time. There was still plenty of fuel, and I had enough water as well. I turned off the main lights and lay down on the bed. My eyes remained fixed on the countdown as I quietly waited for the next battle to begin. The countdown kept dropping with every passing minute and every second. I was lying in bed. But no matter how many times I turned over, I couldn't fall asleep. The phone screen kept lighting up again and again. Macs were constantly pouring into the owner's group. The black bear was dead, but the people's fear still hadn't disappeared. Everyone was still discussing the horrifying events that had just happened. Many people were mourning their family members who had been killed. Someone tagged me and wrote, "Teach you one. If your apartment still has electricity, could you please share some electricity with our homes too? My mother has a weak heart and her oxygen machine stopped working because the power is out." Another person said, "Yeah, your apartment's renovation was so well done. You must have food too. My daughter won't stop crying because she's so hungry." I looked at these messages and gave a cold laugh. Then I didn't reply to anyone. Now they suddenly remembered that they needed my help. A moment ago, they were calling me crazy and accusing me of trying to rob them. Why weren't they talking this politely back then? Just then, the man who had been completely silent until now. At the exact moment the countdown reached 0, I didn't hear any kind of massive explosion. Instead, the entire world suddenly fell into a strange silence. I walked over to the window, and the moment I saw what was happening outside, I couldn't believe my eyes. The hot, humid, rainy night that had been there just moments ago had completely disappeared. In its place, huge cotton-like snowflakes were continuously falling from the sky. It's freezing. The temperature is dropping way too fast. Less than 5 minutes had passed when a thick layer of ice started forming on the window. The temperature outside was dropping rapidly right before my eyes. It had fallen straight from 30 degrees to 20 degrees, and it was still dropping. The owner's group immediately descended into complete chaos. Help! The water pipes in my house froze and burst. How did snow suddenly start falling? It's so cold. It's seriously freezing. The heating system isn't working at all. Where's property management? Where the hell did property management disappear to? I immediately turned on the central air conditioning and set the temperature to maximum. Good thing that when I reinforced the walls earlier, I had also installed a 20-centimeter thick insulation layer. So for the moment, the temperature inside my apartment was still reasonably warm. Thank God. I'd already anticipated the possibility of extreme weather. These alloy carbon fiber walls were providing incredible heat insulation. I pulled a thick down jacket out of the storage room and put it on. Then I checked the backup power supply. Something was wrong. This snow was way too strange. I looked more carefully, noticed that the snowflakes were behaving as if they were desperately trying to squeeze inside through every tiny gap in the windows, almost as if they were after my life. Even though I'd completely sealed the entire apartment, I could still feel the bone-chilling cold reaching inside. Then I heard heavy footsteps coming from the corridor. This wasn't the sound of some animal running around like the black bear. Instead, it sounded like something hard was dragging itself across the floor as it moved forward. It's here. The guest for the new dungeon has arrived. I stared at the CCTV screen. In the corridor, I saw something that looked like a human being, but its entire body was covered in white frost. Its movements were incredibly slow. After every step, a line of ice crystals formed underneath its feet. It was the same neighbor who had been killed by the black bear just a short while ago. His eyes had now turned completely gray-white, and his skin had become a horrifying blue-purple color. But somehow, he had come back to life, not a zombie. This looks more like some kind of puppet being controlled by freezing energy. The ice corpse reached the door of the C-300 wing, but unlike the black bear, it didn't start violently smashing the door. It simply placed its hand gently on the door handle. Then something shocking happened. Within just a few seconds, the entire security door rapidly froze solid. And the moment he gave it a light push, it shattered into pieces like fragile glass. Against this kind of extreme cold, physical defenses were basically useless. A blood-curdling scream came from inside Sunon's apartment. But very soon, even that scream disappeared. All that remained was the sound of cracking ice. I have to do something. If my door freezes too, it's all over. I immediately ran into the living room and adjusted the direction of the air conditioner's outlet so the warm air would blow directly toward the main door. Then I pressed another button. Go ahead, freeze this too, bastard. I specifically prepared this for extreme cold weather. Electricity started flowing through the high-resistance heating elements installed inside the outer layer of the main door. The entire main door immediately became scorching hot. The frost outside couldn't even reach the door before the heat turned it into water vapor and made it evaporate. The ice corpse seemed to sense the heat coming from my apartment. It slowly turned its head and stared at my CCTV camera with its empty eyes. Come on, let's see which one freezes first. Your ice, or my heat. The ice corpse standing outside the door seemed to become slightly frightened after sensing the high temperature of the main door. After wandering around for a while, it suddenly turned around and headed toward the elevator. I hadn't even had time to breathe a sigh of relief when knocking suddenly started coming from my door again. But this time, it wasn't the heavy pounding of a monster. It was the sound of human fingers gently knocking against the door. Leeching, are you inside? Please, open the door. My daughter is very... I looked outside through the peephole. It was the young mother from apartment 5002. She was standing there curled up, holding her daughter in her arms. Her eyebrows were completely covered in frost, and her lips had turned purple from the cold. In the novel, this was the same woman who had once tried to kill another person with a pair of scissors over half a piece of bread. I let out a quiet sigh, but I still didn't open the door. In an apocalypse like this, kindness was the most expensive thing of all. I said, "You need to leave. I can't help you. Go to the rooftop machinery room. Maybe there's still some heat left up there." She started screaming. "Leeching, you have electricity in your apartment. You have heating. Then how can you just leave us here to die? We're all neighbors. You'll never have any good come to you." After that, she started violently kicking my main door. Her screams attracted the ice corpse that had just left. It started coming back toward me, and it wasn't alone. At the other end of the corridor, 3 more identical figures suddenly appeared. Freezing cold energy was radiating from their entire bodies. Damn it. This stupid woman has attracted all the monsters here. I looked at the CCTV. One of the ice corpses suddenly grabbed the woman from apartment 502 by the shoulder from behind. She let out one final, extremely desperate scream, and then her entire body rapidly transformed into an ice statue. After the monsters finished her off, they once again turned their attention toward my main door. This time, they didn't back away. All 4 of them placed their hands against the door at the same time. That's bad. Even the high-resistance heating system can't match their freezing speed. The main door began making a creaking sound, as if it couldn't handle the pressure. Little by little, the freezing cold energy started slipping through the gaps in the door. I looked at the last mysterious weapon I had left in my hand. This was my final trump card. If you guys really want to come inside, then come. I'll show you what a real cremation ground looks like. The white frost covering the main door kept getting thicker, even though the high-resistance heating system was operating at full power. Stopping the combined freezing power of the 4 ice corpses outside was becoming increasingly difficult. The metal door panel started making a teeth-rattling twisting sound, as if it could break apart at any moment. These monsters even knew how to coordinate their attacks. It seemed like the difficulty of this extreme cold dungeon was not just one level higher than the Black Bear dungeon, it was several levels higher. Just as the freezing cold energy was about to pass through the gaps in the door and enter the living room, I didn't back down. Instead, I pulled out a red cylinder about half the height of a human from behind the sofa. When I reinforced the apartment, I had specifically commissioned a blacksmith to make this high-pressure thermal energy sprayer. Originally, I wanted to save it for the zoo director, but since you guys are so eager to come inside, I'll clear the way with you first. I didn't open the door directly. Instead, I used my phone to activate the backup exhaust vent installed above the door frame. This vent had originally been designed for ventilation, but now, it had become my attack point. Here, eat this. A bright dark red flame resembling a fire dragon blasted out of the exhaust vent with a deafening roar. It swallowed the clusters of freezing cold energy outside in an instant. The high temperature and extreme cold collided with each other, and the corridor was immediately filled with thick white water vapor. On the CCTV, I could see that the ice corpses were completely stunned by the sudden wave of intense heat. The white frost covering their bodies began melting rapidly, revealing the dry skin underneath. Amid the flames, they started screaming in an incredibly sharp and terrifying voice. Physical defenses couldn't stop you, but I'm sure you'll love this 2,000-degree high-temperature fire stream. The ice corpse standing at the front began cracking apart from the impact of the flames, almost like a shattered porcelain statue. Eventually, its body couldn't withstand the heat any longer. It crashed heavily onto the ground and turned into a puddle of black liquid. Seeing the situation getting worse, the remaining monsters suddenly turned around and began retreating into the elevator with their stiff, unnatural movements. Even after forcing the first wave of ice corpses to retreat, I didn't lower my guard. I increased the heating power of the main door again and set the air conditioner's fan speed to maximum, making sure the temperature inside the apartment remained stable. That's strange. These monsters retreated in a very organized way. It almost seems like someone is commanding them from behind. I switched between the CCTV screens, trying to find the footprints of that man in the red robe or any trace he might have left behind, but all I could see in the corridor were frost-covered surfaces and several ice statues that had once been my neighbors. Other than that, the entire corridor was empty. Then I noticed an important detail. The doors of 301 and the other rooms where survivors were hiding, they're all completely open. Did all of them get captured? I slowed down the playback speed of the CCTV recording. The footage showed that while the ice corpses were attacking my main door, several much more agile gray figures suddenly rushed inside the normal security doors. The neighbors didn't even have time to scream. They were dragged straight into the depths of the dark corridor. Seeing that scene sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't simple killing. It looked more like the people were being harvested according to some kind of pre-planned process. What exactly is hidden inside this apartment complex? The dungeon the system was talking about. Does it mean turning everyone in this entire building into those monsters? The owner's group had gone completely silent. The last message was still the request for help from the woman in apartment 502. That deathly silence created even more pressure than when the Black Bear had been trying to break down the doors. I went into the storage room and checked the box containing my mysterious weapons. There were still 2 untouched treasures inside. These were my strength, and they were also the reason I was confident that even when the final climax arrived, I would still be able to face it, whether it was a human or a ghost. If anyone dared to set their sights on my home, I would fight them until my very last breath. 6 hours had passed since the extreme cold began. Outside the window, so much snow had accumulated that it had already reached the height of the 2nd floor. The entire building now looked like an isolated island, completely buried inside a white frozen wilderness. I sat in front of the CCTV screens, mechanically eating compressed biscuits. Then a familiar figure appeared on the screen. It was that man in the red robe. He had once again arrived in front of my apartment door, but this time, he was holding an insulated food container that was releasing warm steam. This man could walk around the 50-degree corridor so easily, as if the temperature outside wasn't a problem for him at all. He looked toward the CCTV camera and slowly opened the insulated container. There was no killing intent coming from him. Instead, inside was a steaming bowl of braised tofu. He said, "Mr. Lee, don't be nervous. I'm not like those stupid ice corpses. I'm here to talk business." I asked, "Business? You killed all my neighbors, and now you're here trying to talk business with me?" He replied, "Those idiots were just sacrifices, but you've proven your value. This building needs a new administrator. If you're willing to join us, this bowl of meat is only the beginning. I stared at the steaming braised tofu on the screen, but all I felt was disgust. In an apocalypse, an abnormal gift like this usually came with a deadly price. I said, I'm not interested in becoming an administrator. I just want to live peacefully in my little space. Take your stuff and leave. The woman in the red robe didn't get angry. She placed the insulated food container on the ground, then raised one finger and slowly waved it. Don't refuse so quickly. Before the next countdown begins, you'll be the one begging me to come inside, because the owner of this building is about to wake up. After saying that, she turned around. Her strange body slowly disappeared into the cold mist. I kept staring at the insulated food container, my heart beating faster and faster. Less than half an hour after Hung Yu left, the CCTV suddenly started blaring a loud alarm. On the screen, I saw a group of people wearing torn, ragged clothes, climbing the stairs toward the 8th floor. They weren't monsters. They were the missing neighbors. They were carrying axes, steel pipes, and even homemade torches. Madness was clearly visible in every one of their eyes. They weren't dead, but their mental state was definitely far from normal. At the very front was the middle-aged man from apartment 301. His entire body had turned blue from the cold, yet he seemed completely incapable of feeling pain. As he climbed the stairs, he screamed like a madman. Liqing, Shanyao, come out. Mr. Hung said that if we drink the divine water from your home, we'll never feel cold again. I immediately understood. The woman in the red robe wasn't just using monsters to eliminate people, she was also exploiting human greed to control these survivors. Her plan was to use these neighbors as cannon fodder and weaken the defenses of my fortress. Divine water? That guy really is an expert at making up stories. Dozens of neighbors gathered outside my door. They weren't asking me for help anymore. Instead, like wild animals, they started frantically digging into the wall around my main door. They knew the main door was extremely hot, so they were trying to dig through the wall and get inside that way. This wall has entire alloy steel plates installed inside it. You could keep digging until next year, and you still wouldn't get through. But I'd underestimated the madness of these people. They started gathering flammable materials in front of my door. Maybe they wanted to use a massive fire to burn through the ceiling strips around my door. This is seriously a group of lunatics. If you don't care about your own lives, then I don't need to show you any mercy either. I pressed the red switch installed underneath the living room floor. This was the 4th trap I'd originally prepared to stop the black bear from digging its way inside. I gave them one final warning. I'm telling you one more time, back off. Otherwise, you'll be responsible for the consequences. Looking at those crazy neighbors digging at the wall beside my door, I no longer hesitated. I directly pressed the activation button for the 4th trap. Suddenly, several loud cracking sounds rang out. The floor on both sides of the main door immediately flipped open. Hidden alloy spikes shot out rapidly with a cold metallic gleam, forcing several of the neighbors at the front to immediately retreat. However, I deliberately kept the power under control, so the spikes only pierced their clothes and the soles of their shoes. But even this sudden trap activation was enough to make the entire crowd scream. This was only a warning. Anyone who takes even one more step forward, next time, the spikes will go straight through the soles of your feet. The crowd that had been completely out of control just moments ago suddenly went silent, as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice-cold water over them. They all started backing away. The middle-aged man from 301 went completely pale. The axe in his hand slipped from his grip and hit the ground with a clear metallic clang. His house really has traps. Mr. Hung never told us about this. While the neighbors stood there in confusion, the red mist in the corridor suddenly became even thicker. The voice of the woman in the red robe echoed through the corridor. There was a strange power in her voice, something that seemed capable of manipulating people's hearts and minds. Don't be afraid. He's just a human. Just get inside, and you can achieve immortality. You'll never have to suffer from this terrible cold again. The neighbors who had just started retreating suddenly became blank-eyed and crazed again. It was as if they had completely stopped feeling pain. Despite the spikes sticking out of the floor, they started moving forward again, even trying to use their own bodies to fill the traps. These people have gone completely insane. What the hell did that woman in the red robe put into their minds? Watching their twisted, distorted faces one by one through the CCTV, I finally understood. These neighbors were no longer human beings like me. They had become walking corpses under the control of the woman in the red robe. The attack from outside continued nonstop. But now, an even bigger problem had appeared in front of me. The snow outside the window had become so thick that it completely covered the solar panels on the roof. My self-power generation system had stopped working. Damn it. There's only 30% power left in the backup battery. The main door heating and the air conditioner are both running at high power, so the battery was draining extremely fast. If the electricity went out, even the insulation layer wouldn't be able to block the 60-degree extreme cold outside. Before the battery completely died, I had to somehow clear the snow from the roof, or deal with those annoying people outside. If you people aren't planning to leave, then try out my second big gift. I quickly ran into the living room and pulled down a hidden pull ring installed in the ceiling. A special high-intensity light slowly descended from above and focused directly on the area in front of the main door. These ice-type monsters and brainwashed people had to hate strong ultraviolet light. I switched on the electricity, and a blinding purple light instantly burst to life, shining directly through the peephole and the gaps around the door into the corridor. Suddenly, extremely painful screams came from outside. The neighbors who had been attacking like madmen all covered their eyes and collapsed onto the floor. As soon as the powerful light hit them, the red fog quickly started disappearing, revealing the shocked and restless face of the woman in the red robe hidden inside it. An ultraviolet lamp? You even prepared something like this? I said. I've got enough tricks up my sleeve to keep you guessing for the rest of your life. The ultraviolet lamp forced the crowd to retreat for a while, and the woman in the red robe disappeared back into the shadows. I took advantage of the opportunity and shut down every unnecessary electrical appliance in the house, trying to save every single unit of electricity. Then I remembered something. When the powerful light had fallen on her body, I'd noticed that her shadow looked strange. I slowed down the footage and watched it carefully. Under the strong light, the shadow of the woman in the red robe looked nothing like a human shadow. Instead, it had the outline of a gigantic monster, with countless tentacles extending from its body. She's not some ordinary human. She's not even some kind of twins. She's either the true boss of this dungeon, or an incarnation of its owner. I was still trying to figure out how to deal with this situation, when suddenly the temperature inside my house began dropping rapidly. I'd properly sealed every door and window. And yet, right in the middle of the living room, an ice pillar suddenly began forming. What the hell is happening? Can she actually pass straight through the walls? The ice pillar grew rapidly, and within moments, it transformed into the shape of the woman in the red robe. But this time, she wasn't wearing the red robe. Her entire body was covered in white frost, giving her a terrifying appearance. She said, "Leeching, you think you're safe hiding inside this iron shell? Every brick and every tile in this building is under Molly's control. Now that you've come inside, don't even dream of getting out alive." I shouted, "Get out!" And suddenly I lunged toward the ice figure. Blue electric arcs were shooting from my electric baton, but my body passed straight through hers, as if she were nothing more than a holographic projection. Even though the ice figure looked like a projection, the freezing cold energy released by the movement of her hand was completely real. The living room floor instantly froze and began cracking, and the freezing cold reached my feet. Damn it. Physical attacks don't work on her. The ice figure's hand was just about to touch my chest when I suddenly remembered the mysterious weapons box I'd still never used. I rolled across the floor and rushed toward it as fast as I could. From inside, I pulled out a yellow talisman paper glowing with a red light. This is the Lee Ho talisman I received when I bought the weapon. They said it could break through all kinds of evil energy and freezing poison. I don't know if it'll actually work. I shouted and tightly wrapped the talisman around my electric baton. Then I attacked the ice figure once again. This time, the moment the talisman came into contact with the freezing energy, a powerful red flame burst out from it on its own. The fire traveled along the electric baton, and within moments it transformed into a massive blade of fire. It works! The moment the fire blade struck the ice figure's body, a sharp sizzling sound rang out, like hot metal being dropped into water. The ice figure screamed in pain, and her previously virtual body suddenly began turning solid. Pain was clearly visible across her face. What kind of power is this? How can you possibly have something like this? This isn't part of the dungeon, I said. I came from another world. I brought a little local equipment with me. So what's the problem? Now break! I swung the fire blade with all my strength. The blade swept rapidly across in a horizontal direction, slicing the ice figure's body cleanly in half. Her body shattered into countless ice fragments and scattered across the floor. Then the flames burned every last piece until nothing remained. As soon as the ice figure disappeared, the freezing cold energy inside my house finally began to weaken. I used my electric baton to support myself as I stood there, breathing heavily. The Lee Ho talisman's power had also been completely exhausted. The talisman turned to ash and fell to the ground. That was way too close. If I hadn't had this talisman, I'd have literally become an ice statue today. I hadn't even gotten a chance to sit down and rest when the entire building suddenly began shaking violently. This wasn't an earthquake. It felt more like some gigantic creature beneath the building had just rolled over in its sleep. On the CCTV footage, the snow that had accumulated throughout the corridor suddenly began cracking and rotting, spreading a horrifying stench everywhere. The bodies of the neighbors who had previously been turned into ice statues began sinking into the floor, one after another. What the hell is happening now? The countdown hasn't even ended yet. I looked toward the countdown that was still visible right in front of my eyes. Where there were still 6 hours left on the countdown, the numbers suddenly started changing rapidly, and finally, a red warning appeared on the screen. Dungeon balance failure detected. The owner has awakened ahead of schedule. I shouted angrily, "Can't you people just play fair? The moment you start losing, You have to flip the entire table? I immediately rushed toward the window, and what I saw made my heart sink. The empty field in the middle of the residential complex had suddenly disappeared, and in its place, a massive abyss had opened up. From deep inside that bottomless pit, a gigantic black claw emerged, so enormous that it was almost impossible to describe with words. That claw tightly grabbed the foundation of our entire building. Slowly, the entire building began getting dragged toward the abyss, while a terrifying metallic screech echoed through the surroundings, loud enough to shake the sky itself. I looked at my Eclipse fortress, the fortress I had built with so much hard work. But in front of that absolute power, even my fortress looked ridiculously small and helpless. I said, "If you want to eat me, then first make sure your teeth are strong enough to actually chew me." The building started shaking violently, but this time, the cause wasn't some monster lurking underground. The building's foundation had already suffered catastrophic damage. Through the CCTV cameras, I saw a few people in red robes commanding several small excavators below. They were digging into the building's foundation like complete maniacs. These crazy people are actually trying to bring down the entire building just to force me outside. I looked at the countdown displayed right in front of my eyes. At first, I thought it was a countdown for some new monster to appear, but now I finally understood. It was the final warning before the building's structural failure. If the building tilted more than 15 degrees, the fortress I had worked so hard to build would become nothing more than my own iron coffin. No, I can't just sit here and do nothing. If you people want to bring down my house, then I'll make my own little contribution too. I rushed toward the control panel and activated the emergency reinforcement system I had installed in the basement. Several thick hydraulic support rods were installed there. Originally, I had put them in place to protect the building from earthquakes, but now, those same supports had become my last hope of saving the entire building. Hold on for me! The moment the hydraulic support rods slammed into the ground beneath the building, the shaking decreased for a while, but I knew they wouldn't last forever. Then, through the CCTV, I spotted several large gasoline barrels below. The fire might not be able to damage these walls immediately, since they were designed to withstand extremely high temperatures. But if the flames kept burning for a long time, they could definitely weaken the strength of the steel. I saw the woman in the red robe giving instructions to the people below, and that was when I finally understood when the real battle had begun. A raging fire suddenly erupted below. Thick, black smoke began pouring rapidly through the gaps around the corridors and windows. Even though I had made the entire house completely airtight, that sharp, tar-like smell of smoke still managed to seep inside. Wait, there's poison in this smoke. These people actually threw rubber and plastic into the fire. The woman in the red robe's move was extremely vicious. She knew that breaking through the main door wouldn't be easy, so instead, she wanted to suffocate me from the inside using dense, poisonous smoke. I immediately activated the indoor air circulation and purification system, but the purifier's filter was being consumed at an insane rate. With this much smoke entering the building, it could run for a maximum of 3 hours. I switched the CCTV screen and saw that the neighbors who had already been brainwashed were being moved by the woman in the red robe. She had positioned them on the opposite side of the wind, in a place where the airflow was blowing directly from them toward the building. They were holding wet cloths in their hands, staring at the fire with completely blank expressions. I shouted, "Have you people gone crazy? If that fire gets any bigger, you won't survive either." But no one paid any attention to me. The woman in the red robe stood calmly in the middle of the smoke. Then, slowly, she raised a remote control toward my CCTV camera. She said, "Mr. Lee, don't struggle so much. This smoke is only an appetizer. If you open the door right now and share all your supplies with everyone, I guarantee I'll let you leave here safely." I said, "Share my supplies? I think you're actually planning to turn me into the next braised meat dish." I shut off the speaker and headed toward the kitchen. "If you want to play with fire, then I'll add a little more fuel to the flames." The smoke was getting thicker and denser by the second, but I didn't panic at all. I activated the infrared mode on the CCTV system and kept my eyes locked on the red-robed woman's every movement. Why are her movements so professional? I zoomed in on the remote control in the red-robed woman's hand. It wasn't an ordinary remote at all. It was an ignition device used for industrial blasting. That's when an idea suddenly hit me. I remembered a wanted notice I had seen earlier through Chan Yue. That's right. I remembered now. She was the same fugitive who had been on the run for 10 years. Her nickname was Red Fox. She wasn't doing all of this for some divine medicine. Her real goal was to bring down this building and bury the secret she had hidden in the basement. None of this had happened in the original novel. It seemed that my arrival had completely disrupted her entire plan, and now she was being forced to execute it ahead of schedule. Now I finally understood why she had been constantly trying to get into my room. When I had the house reinforced, I had accidentally cut through the explosive wiring hidden inside her wall. I immediately pulled out the circuit diagram from the time the house was renovated. Sure enough, there were several thin wires hidden inside the load-bearing wall on the 8th floor. And there was no clear source for them. Looks like I really was lucky. During the renovation, I had accidentally cut her hidden wiring. The red-robed woman must have realized it too. She stopped making announcements and instead grabbed a black briefcase and started climbing toward the 8th floor through the emergency staircase. Eventually, the red-robed woman reached my door. This time, there was no black bear with her, and there were no neighbors either. She was completely alone. She started drilling beside my main door, preparing for directional blasting. I said, "All right, you don't have to work that hard. I already cut the wiring to your detonators during the house renovation," thinking they were useless electrical wires. Her movement outside the door suddenly stopped. The red-robed woman turned off the drill and remained silent for a few seconds. Then she said, "You really do know quite a lot. If that's the case, then I definitely can't let you stay alive." I said, "You really think you'll be able to escape after blowing up this entire building? The police have surrounded the entire area outside. Those explosions just now already alerted them. If you leave right now, you might still be able to escape." In reality, I was just bluffing her. The system had blocked all signals, and the outside world had absolutely no idea what was happening here. But I needed to break through her psychological defenses. She said, "Don't lie to me. My signal jammers have this entire 5-kilometer area covered. Leeching, you're a smart man. Reconnect those severed hidden wires, and I'll spare your life." I said, "You'll spare my life? You're planning to blow up all those neighbors at the same time. How exactly are you planning to let me go?" Through the CCTV, I saw the neighbors below start getting restless the moment they heard the words, "blow them all up." The red-robed woman's lies were slowly falling apart. Her psychological attack strategy had failed, so she stopped hiding her intentions. She directly shoved a block of plastic explosive into the gap beside the door. She said, "If you refuse to cooperate, then get ready to fly into the sky with your fortress." I knew exactly how powerful plastic explosives were, so I immediately rushed into the bedroom and pressed the green button I had never used until today. "You want to blow me up? Then take a cold shower first." The moment I activated the entire house's fire suppression and blast protection systems, a massive amount of dry powder and firefighting foam blasted out from outside the main door, completely covering the explosive block. At the same time, I activated a high-frequency jammer to interfere with the signal from her electronic detonator. Then suddenly, the loud sound of a helicopter echoed outside the building. A massive searchlight pierced through the black smoke and illuminated our floor. The countdown had ended. In reality, the beginning of the new dungeon meant that the signal blockade covering the outside world had been lifted. When Red Fox saw this, the expression on her face completely changed. She abandoned the explosives and immediately tried to run. But how could I let her leave that easily? I said, "Since you came here, you're staying right here." I activated the mechanism on the main door, and suddenly, a high-pressure burst of tear gas shot out through the weep hole. Red Fox screamed and grabbed her eyes as she stumbled down the emergency staircase. From below, I could hear the voices of the special police forces approaching. The brainwashed neighbors immediately put their hands behind their heads and began sitting down on the ground. I watched through the CCTV as the fire slowly died down, then let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, it was really over. When the special police broke through the window and entered, I was lying on the sofa, breathing heavily. Tears were continuously streaming from Red Fox's eyes because of the tear gas, and 2 special police officers brought her down through the emergency staircase. I said, "Police officer, don't shoot. I'm the one who reported everything, and I'm the owner of this house." I was escorted out of the fortress that had protected me for more than half a month. The moment I stepped outside the door, the entire corridor was packed with heavily armed police officers, while several neighbors were receiving treatment. One of the neighbors said, "Police officer, I had no choice. All of this happened because of that woman in the red robe." I was looking at those neighbors who, just a short while ago, had been attacking our door like complete maniacs. But now, one by one, they were sitting there quieter than rabbits. Sometimes, the human heart can change even faster than black bears, and it can be even more fragile. Just then, the team leader said, "Boss, we found illegal materials inside the fire. Red Fox had hidden detonators inside the load-bearing wall. Get the bomb disposal team here immediately and have them deal with it." The team leader looked at me deeply, then gestured for the officers to take me downstairs. I turned around and looked at my main door one last time. It was covered in scratches and burn marks from one end to the other, but it had truly done its job. It had pulled me back from the edge of hell. As I sat beside the ambulance, I thought everything was finally over, but when my eyes accidentally glanced at my retina again, that damn countdown hadn't disappeared. Instead, it had turned golden. First stage survival challenge completed. Reward, permanent house reinforcement. Second stage, truth investigation initiated. I thought, it's not over yet. Is this system really going to keep coming after me until it kills me? I was placed in a temporary tent outside the residential complex. Officially, it was for my protection, but in reality, it was basically a form of detention. Red Fox wasn't saying a single word in the interrogation room, and the police investigation had reached a complete dead end. Then someone suddenly said, "How is this possible? All the information about the developer of this residential complex has been deleted. Using the encrypted network of my fortress, I hacked into the back-end database of the society's management system. And that's when I discovered something shocking. Every owner in this building, including me, had actually been placed on a special observation list. Black Bear entering the building wasn't an accident. The extreme cold weather might have been a natural phenomenon, but Red Fox coming here was definitely planned. I found a file called Pressure Test. It turned out this entire residential complex had been built by a company called Deep Space Pharmaceuticals as an experimental site. Their objective was to test human behavior and decision-making logic under extreme pressure. So, all of us were their guinea pigs. They were the ones who released Black Bear here, and they were also the ones who hired Red Fox. I was just about to investigate this information more deeply when I suddenly heard rapid footsteps outside the tent. I immediately hid my phone and lay down on the folding bed, pretending to be asleep. A voice came from outside. "Has that leeching still not talked? He's extremely valuable to our research. We have to get him under our control, no matter what." My heart skipped a beat. They still haven't given up. Even the property manager is one of their people. I thought to myself, if you people want to play games, then I'll flip the entire chessboard upside down. When the guards were changing shifts, I took advantage of the opportunity and slipped out of the temporary camp. I wasn't running away. Instead, while avoiding the patrol team, I made my way back into the building, which was now completely empty. I said, "There's no place as comfortable as home." Although the place was now nothing more than an empty shell, this was the only place where I had a chance to launch a counterattack. I used fingerprint recognition to enter my room again. The moment the system detected my return, all the defensive facilities were automatically reactivated. Illegal intruders detected nearby. "Would you like to activate the automatic defense system?" I said. "Don't activate it yet. Connect the CCTV footage to my phone. I want to see what these scientists are actually planning." On the CCTV, I saw several people wearing white protective suits. They were quietly sneaking into the basement. They were carrying large boxes in their hands, which looked like some kind of sampling equipment. Just as I suspected, they had come to erase every trace of the experiment. If they took all the evidence with them, I would be trapped forever, with no way to prove what had really happened. I opened a hidden compartment beneath the living room floor and pulled out a high-powered signal transmitter. This was the secret weapon I had prepared and installed during the house renovation. It could directly shut down every electronic device within a 1-kilometer radius. "You came here to erase the evidence? Then first, I'll turn all your equipment into useless scrap." I pressed the transmission button. At that exact moment, all the lights throughout the building flickered once. Then, panicked voices began coming from the basement. Just then, the property manager arrived with several strong men and forcibly broke through my door. They thought I was still in the temporary camp, but what they didn't know was that I was sitting comfortably in the rocking chair in my living room, holding a glass of Coca-Cola in my hand. I said, "Mr. Manager, did you really bring this many people to check the meter in the middle of the night? Your efficiency is seriously impressive. Leeching, you really are a variable. Give us that file, and I can talk to the company and try to make you our partner." I said, "A partner, like Red Fox, whom you use and then throw away. Or like the neighbors, whom you treat as nothing more than raw material for your experiments." I didn't panic at all. Then I said, "Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to tell you. The floor of this living room is electrified now." I pressed the electric motor button built into the armrest of my rocking chair, and in the very next moment, screams echoed throughout the room. Those strong men hadn't even managed to reach me before the high-voltage current sent them crashing to the ground. The property manager was wearing insulated shoes, so he somehow managed to survive, but the gun in his hand was now pointed directly at my head. He said, "You really think these little tricks are going to save your life? Die." The moment he tried to pull the trigger, I activated the high-pressure water cannon installed in the ceiling. The powerful stream of water not only disrupted his vision, but also turned the entire living room into one massive conductive zone. I said, "Goodbye, manager. If you ever want to run an experiment in your next life, pick a neighbor who isn't obsessed with renovations." The electric current immediately traveled through the water and surged through his entire body. The property manager's body shook violently for several seconds, and then he collapsed onto the floor, completely unconscious. By the time the first sunlight of morning entered the living room, a large number of police vehicles had already surrounded the entire residential complex. This time, it wasn't the special police. A special investigation team had arrived. I said, "This is the evidence you've been looking for. All the experiment records and money transfer records are on this USB drive." I stood in front of the building and watched as the executives of Deep Space Pharmaceuticals were handcuffed, one after another. That system countdown that had been tormenting me for so long, finally at that exact moment it reached 0, and in its place a line of green text appeared. "All dungeons cleared. Host has obtained lifetime safe housing rights. System officially terminated." I thought, finally, I can live like a normal person. The neighbors were gradually brought back. Although there was still a mixture of respect and distance in everyone's eyes when they looked at me, no one dared knock on my door anymore, and no one in the owner group ever tried to pressure me morally again. One neighbor said, "Good morning, Mr. Lee." I replied, "Good morning, Uncle Wang." I returned to my fortress. The steel plates installed inside the walls were still there, and I never removed the spikes from the peepholes either. In this uncertain world, those cold metal plates were the thing that made me feel the most secure. Even though the system was gone, I decided to keep the entire setup exactly as it was, permanently. After all, who knows? Maybe tomorrow another black bear will come knocking on my door. So guys, that's where the complete recap of this manhwa comes to an end. At the beginning, I had to turn my home into a fortress just to survive a black bear. But as the story progressed, I discovered that an entire dangerous conspiracy was hiding behind everything that happened. In the end, I didn't just survive. I also exposed the truth behind the entire experiment. If you enjoyed this manhwa recap, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around for more interesting manhwa stories like this.